Okay, now we get to an interesting topic called eclipses. Very related to the phases of the moon. Okay? So let's see when eclipses happen, why do they happen, how long do they last, what's the difference between solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. See, something like this. So this one here, when the moon is between the sun and the earth, and if it comes directly in between in a straight line fashion, you might get something like this. The moon might cover up the sun, and you might have an event called solar eclipse. You see? Opposite, when the moon is on the opposite side, directly in the line between the sun, the earth, and the moon, the earth's shadow might fall on the moon, and you might get a what? Lunar eclipse. So what phase of the moon must it be when the solar eclipse is happening? Back to this. What phase of the moon is it when the moon is between the sun and the earth? New moon. The other interesting thing about it is, how come a small object such as the moon can completely cover the sun? Isn't the moon much smaller? If I take a nickel, which is much smaller than the square of the projectile, the projector, can I cover up the projectile, the light? So this is much smaller than that. But if I play around with the distance, can I cover it up? Yeah. A small object can cover up the light of a big object if the small object is close enough to you, right? That's what's happening here. The moon is much smaller, but its angular diameter. Angular diameter means the angle that it subtends to my eye. See, angular diameter. The angular diameter of the moon is about half an angle, half a degree. The angular diameter of the sun is also about half a degree. So we are kind of lucky that the moon is close enough to us so that we can get a beautiful event such as a solar eclipse. Okay? If the moon had been much, much farther, there's no way we could have covered up the sun, you see. So, characteristics of the solar eclipse can only be seen during the day inside of the shadow. So what's going to happen during a solar eclipse is the moon is going to cast a shadow on the earth, something like this. The shadow is not going to travel necessarily in a straight line. You see, August 1, 2008, August 11, 1999, March 20, 2015. You see how it's going up? In order to see the solar eclipse, you have to be inside of that shadow. Okay? It's occurring during the day. The next one that's going to come through the US, August 21, 2017. You see the shadow is going to travel like that through the northern United States. The shadow travels from west to east about 1,000 miles an hour. So it's about something like this. It's traveling from west to east. So you got to go, if you're a photographer, you got to go locate yourself. And then as the shadow is coming, it's going to be about 100 kilometers wide. You're going to have the time. By the time the shadow enters you, you have about 5 minutes or so to take pictures, beautiful pictures of the solar eclipse. The umbral shadow of the sun is about 100 kilometers wide. That's where you want to be. You want to be in the umbral shadow, which is the dark shadow. Okay? You see here, this one here? You got the sun, and if you draw a line between here and here, and here and here, and draw a line from here to here, here to here, the umbral shadow is the dark part. The penumbra, if you're in the penumbra, you don't really see a nice solar eclipse. You see, if I make this bigger, from outer space, this is a solar eclipse happening. A satellite has taken it. The umbral shadow is the inside center So if you're there somewhere in the umbral shadow, people are actually observing a total solar eclipse right now. If you're on the outside of it, you see how the light shadow, they're not really seeing a full-on solar eclipse. That's the penumbra. So you want to be in the inside. You see that one in the inner circle? That's the penumbral, that's the umbral shadow. The penumbra is just much bigger. It's not that interesting. So solar eclipse in a particular spot, it doesn't last long. Sometimes the shadow is traveling by you. Sometimes it can last 2 minutes, maybe if you're lucky 3, 4, 5 minutes. You don't want to be looking at the sun directly. Even if it's a solar eclipse happening, the rays of the sun are still dangerous. They're still coming toward you. So you got to wear particular glasses, sun filters, so you can see this beautiful event. And what phase of the moon must it be? New moon. Okay, because the moon's got to be between the earth and the sun. Different kinds of solar eclipses. Total solar eclipse happens, that means the moon is close enough to us to completely cover the sun. This happens when the moon is close to us. That means the moon is at perigee. The moon's orbit around the earth is also elliptical. Sometimes it's close to us, sometimes it's far. So back to the nickel example. If the moon is close to us, and if the sun is far from us, the earth is at aphelion. So see, if I'm far from the projector, and if the nickel is close enough to me, there you go, perfect cover. I can cover it up, you see? So if the sun is far, it's going to appear small. If the moon is close, it's going to appear big. You're going to get a total solar eclipse. Oh, this one shows you, again, some dates like this. March 29, 2006, November 3, 2013. Sometimes they're a little wider, sometimes they're not as wide. The orange ones are total solar eclipses. The blue one, annular eclipses. Don't confuse it with annual. It's not every year. It's not annual. It's annular. So I'll tell you what annular eclipse is in a second. It's these blue ones. And the orange ones are the total solar eclipses. Annular eclipse, so what does that mean? That happens when the moon is far from us. So back to the nickel case. The moon is far, and I just happen to be close to the sun. You see, so the sun is going to appear bigger in the sky. The moon is far. Is the moon going to be able to completely cover the sun? No, it's going to appear a little smaller. So it's going to end up looking something like this. The moon is going to be like this. And then right around the sun, you're going to see a ring because the sun is bigger. Here's the sun in the background. And it looks like a ring, right? So the word annular solar eclipses comes from the Greek word annus, which means ring. So the sun is looking bigger in the sky, and the moon can't completely cover it. Therefore, it has that ring appearance, and we call it annular, meaning ring. So when does that happen? When the moon is far from us, that means it's at apogee, and the sun is close to us. The earth is at perihelion. And this picture here will show you this is an annular eclipse that is about happening. And then what they did is they took the slides and they put it on one picture. You see here, the moon is starting to come and cross the sun. The moon is coming, coming, coming. The moon is coming. At its center, notice the moon is not big enough to cover the sun. So you see the sun appearing. What kind of an eclipse is this? Annular. And then the moon is leaving the sun. The total one looks better because if it completely covers the sun, it looks much, much darker, and it would look something like this. So totals are usually better, you see here? This is a complete total solar eclipse. And whoever took this photo really did a good job. You see the chromosphere of the sun and the prominences, the flames over here. Beautiful picture. Awesome solar eclipse. This was the solar eclipse from July 11th, 1991. You see, that's a very nice one right there. You see over there? Ooh, beautiful. This must be a really good filtered, powerful camera intended for astronomical observations and pictures like this. It's not going to be your ordinary camera that takes picture like this. Now, partial solar eclipse is not as amazing because the moon covers part of the sun. So that's another kind of solar eclipse. Now, we might ask the question, why don't solar eclipses happen every new moon? Because earlier we said, in order for a solar eclipse to occur, it has to be a new moon. So why doesn't solar eclipse happen every month? Why doesn't it happen every time it's new moon? So in order to understand that, we got to understand something. The moon's orbit around the Earth is tilted at 5 degrees with respect to the ecliptical plane. In other words, as the Earth is going around the sun, or like this, the moon's orbit around the Earth is tilted. See, tilt. It's not like this. So if this is the Earth's orbit around the sun, the moon's orbit is like this. And so it's kind of hard for the moon to be directly between us and the sun and to be crossing the plane of the Earth's orbit. You see? I wish it wasn't like that, because if it wasn't like that, we would get solar eclipse every month. We would get lunar eclipse every month, you know? So if we show this video, see here, same, it's going to show you this thing. See here? It's going around. See how it's falling below? It's going above. So even though it's a new moon, now it's going to be solar eclipse. You see how it's crossing the ecliptical plane? Lunar eclipse, solar eclipse. So the shadow of the Earth is exactly falling on it. This one, no eclipse possible. You see? The shadow of the moon is not falling on the Earth. Earth's shadow is not falling on the moon. So no eclipse possible in that case. Now it's possible right here. You see? So in order for an eclipse to happen, you must have a condition where the moon's orbit in the sky, you see, this is the 5-degree tilt right here. You see? So the moon's orbit is 5 degrees tilted. So when the moon is at its new moon phase, it needs to be at its node. You see the node here? Right now, the new moon is occurring, but it's not occurring over there. If the sun was over there and the moon was over there, you would be getting a total solar eclipse, you see? The moon over there, the sun over there, boom, total solar eclipse. Right now, new moon, sun over here. What kind of eclipse is this? Starts with P. Partial solar eclipse. So that's why they're not happening every month. It's because of this 5-degree tilt between the moon's orbit and the Earth's orbit. So the conditions for a solar eclipse are the moon has to be in its new moon phase. We already said that earlier. But the second condition, it needs to be at its node, which is here. Another way to say that is the moon has to be crossing the ecliptical plane. That's another way to say it needs to be at its node. The moon has to be crossing the ecliptical plane. How often does this happen? It's very complicated. It's a cycle known as the Saros Cycle. Saros. And the Saros cycle predicts how often these conditions are satisfied. Do we fully understand the Saros cycle? Now we have fully understood it. We can predict it. And we can put it in a computer software. It can predict to us when the next eclipses are going to happen. Okay? The Saros cycle was somewhat understood back in the Babylonian times, the ancient times, the Egyptians and stuff, but they didn't fully know it. Okay? They could kind of predict when things were going to happen, but not quite to the same accuracy that we do. Okay, on the opposite to that, lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipse happens when the Earth's shadow falls on or covers the moon. You see, sun, Earth falling on the moon. More people will usually have experienced lunar eclipses than solar eclipses. More people usually will experience it. Why? Well, as long as you're living anywhere on this hemisphere when the lunar eclipse is happening, you're going to be able to see it. So with solar eclipse, it's tough. You got to be in that shadow when the moon's shadow is falling on you, you know. You got to be in that shadow. You got to be in the right location. How many here have observed solar eclipse? 1, 2, 3. Total solar eclipse? If you have, you're fortunate. Very few people have observed total solar eclipse. 3, 4 people. I haven't. I've observed partial solar eclipse, but not total. How about lunar? Lunar, more people should have observed it. The whole class should raise their hand. We've had several during the past 5, 6 years. And all you have to know, someone, of course, has to be telling you that it's happening. As long as you go out at night, you see it, boom, there it is. And it lasts longer, too. So usually many more people have observed lunar eclipse. Okay? I've observed at least 3 or 4 of them. So characteristics of lunar eclipse happens during full moon, right? The moon is on the opposite side. Can be seen during night by anyone experiencing nighttime while it is happening. So that's why it's more people can experience it. And it can last longer too. Because the moon is traveling through Earth's shadow. Earth's shadow is huge. So it could take more than an hour. 60 minutes is already an hour, maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours. Different kinds of lunar eclipses. And then we're going to finish with lunar eclipses this page. So lunar eclipses, different kinds. Okay, so this is Earth's shadow right here. Sun, Earth. And then Earth's shadow also has a Umbra and a Penumbra. You see, the Umbra is the real inside dark part. So this is the Umbra. Okay, so if this is the moon, every lunar eclipse starts with a penumbra, right? So this is the penumbra right here. So it's got to start with the penumbra. So penumbral lunar eclipse happens when the moon is inside the penumbral shadow of the Earth. It is then followed by either 2 or 3. So you got to start with a penumbral lunar eclipse. You can't avoid that. Okay? You see, so either you just skim the penumbra and you never enter the umbra. See, this is complete penumbra, never followed by an umbral shadow. So when people say they've observed lunar eclipses or there's a fuss about lunar eclipses, no one has a fuss about penumbra. It's not a big deal. Penumbral lunar eclipse, it just skimmed the penumbra, never entered the umbra. What people really love to see is the umbral one. So either you're going to go like this, what's going to happen? Or you're going to go like that. So, number 2, total or umbral lunar eclipse happens when the moon is inside the umbral shadow of the Earth. Umbral shadow of the Earth, right here. From here to here can last how many minutes? 100. That means totality. Totality is when the moon has entered the umbra goes through and starts coming out of the umbra. That's right there, 100 minutes. What's going to happen when it fully enters the umbra? It's going to start glowing a little reddish, okay? Because the reflection of the sunlight and stuff, it has a real nice, deep, dark red color to it. Okay, that's called totality. So it enters penumbra, goes fully in the umbra, lasts about an hour, hour and a half, then comes out of the penumbra. If you observe that, that's a pretty good, cool phenomenon. Or number 3, partial lunar eclipse is which one? This one. This is number 3. This is number 2. This is number 1. Well, you always start with number 1, and then you either go to 2 or 3, or you just end up with number 1. So this one, is it also cool? Yeah. What you're going to tell over here is part of the moon is going to be really dark. It's umbral shadow. The other part, light shadow. You're going to be able to tell the difference between the two. You see? So this one is also cool, partial lunar eclipse. Why don't lunar eclipses happen every full moon? Same reason why solar eclipses don't happen every new moon. What was the reason? Same reason. Why? What was the reason? The moon's orbit is tilted by 5 degrees with respect to the ecliptical plane. So how often is this going to repeat? The Saros cycle tells us how often this repeats. Okay?